Hi there, Jeff Campbell here from Middle Class Dad over at newmiddleclassdad.com. And in today's Traffic Thoughts video, I'm asking the question, can marriage counseling help save your relationship? I know for me the answer to that question is definitely yes, because marriage counseling definitely played a role in helping save my wife and I's marriage. So I know it can help yours too. And today we're going to dive deep into marriage counseling, what it is, what they do, what it costs, and how it can help save your relationship. So have you or your spouse maybe asked each other about trying marriage counseling? Maybe you've mentioned divorce or separation. Maybe one of you has had an affair and you're not sure if that's a deal breaker. Or you just want to strengthen your marriage. You feel like it's gotten complacent or dull. Any of these things that crop up can be a good reason to seek out marriage counseling. And no matter what the circumstances, unless we're talking something like physical abuse, marriage counseling can help. You didn't say "I do" with the intent of throwing in the towel at the first sign of trouble. So I want to urge you that if you've asked yourself any of those questions I just mentioned, or if you're feeling signs of trouble or discontent, seek out marriage counseling because it can definitely help get your marriage back on track. So what do they do in marriage counseling? A good therapist is going to listen. They're going to provide a safe, nurturing, neutral environment for you and your spouse to talk about your problems openly and honestly. They might repeat back what they heard you say to ensure that that's actually what you meant. Because a lot of the time, we say things in the heat of the moment without really thinking about how it's going to come across to another. And sometimes that might not be what we actually meant to say. You see, we're often the most vulnerable with our spouse or partner, and you'd think that that would cause us to act with the highest level of kindness, but in fact it's often the opposite. We're actually the most raw, the most brutal, the most straightforward with our spouse or our partner, and we remove a lot of the candy coating that we reserve for our friends and coworkers. So this good therapist is going to listen. They're going to provide this safe environment. They're going to allow each of you time to speak to one another. They'll remind you to not interrupt if you happen to be interrupting your spouse, and they'll reinterpret. They'll say back what they heard us say so that we can make sure that that is actually what we meant. So that's what a good therapist is going to do during your session. So another question you might be asking yourself is, what is the success rate of marriage counseling? A company called Health Research Funding took a look at this, and they analyzed a bunch of couples who had not yet said "I do." And they found that of the couples who got marriage counseling before getting married, they saw a 30% increase in the success rate of that marriage. In other words, 30% of couples who get marriage counseling before saying "I do" don't get divorced. And then they also looked at couples who were already married and having troubles. And they looked at all the ones who went to marriage counseling and the ones who didn't. And they saw that 50% of those who went to marriage counseling did not get divorced compared with the rest. So a 30% chance of not getting divorced if you get counseling before you say "I do," and a 50% chance of not getting divorced after you say "I do." To me, those are pretty good odds. So another good question is, how much does it cost to go to marriage counseling? And the range, of course, is going to vary from country to country and state to state, even city to city. But you can expect to pay anywhere from $75 to maybe $125 for a 1-hour session. And how often should you go? In most cases, I think once a week is fine. How many weeks should you go? Probably 8 to 12 minimally to actually see some real progress. Also bear in mind, too, that the first 1 or 2 sessions are going to be devoted mostly for the therapist to get to know each of you. They're going to want to know a little bit about your history together, your childhood, your parents, your relationships prior to your spouse, because that's going to kind of set the table for them to really understand all the different dynamics that have gone into creating the issues that you're currently facing. After all, issues don't come up in a vacuum, and they're not exclusively the other person's fault. It takes two people to make a marriage, and it takes two people to break it. And often some of the issues that break it have nothing to do with our spouse. They're baggage that we brought with us from childhood or previous relationships. So know going into marriage counseling that that's really the case. And you've got to be able to own the things that you're bringing that are destroying the relationship, just like
Another
your spouse
good
does.
question is, does insurance cover marriage counseling?
And unfortunately, in many cases, it does not. However, if you have some sort of flexible spending account, an HSA type of account, where you can set money aside pre-tax to pay for any medical expenses, often that can cover marriage counseling. Also be aware, too, that any unreimbursed medical expense is often tax deductible, at least here in the United States. So check with a good tax preparer to see about that. Lastly, I'll just say marriage counseling, even if you have to pay for it 100% out of pocket, is definitely cheaper than
So one of the
divorce.
things that can be confusing about marriage counseling is all the different types of therapists that there are out there.
There's probably at least 10 or maybe more different kinds of therapists out there, and they all have funny letters at the end of their name, and it's hard to know what's what. So here are the basic rules. First, I'm going to talk about a psychiatrist. A psychiatrist is a doctor. They went to med school to specialize in mental health. And like any other doctor, they can prescribe medication as they see fit. A psychologist is also someone who has the title of doctor, but they did not necessarily go to med school, and they do not have the ability to write prescriptions. Personally, I prefer seeing a psychologist because they have to find ways to deal with your issues and to help you get over these issues without the use of medication. The term psychotherapist is kind of a catch-all term to describe a number of different things. But personally, I like to see a psychologist, a person with a PhD, which means they have years of clinical experience and can help you the best.
Is it too late to save your relationship?
Absolutely not. After all, life happens. Kids happen, career changes happen. We all make mistakes because we're all human beings. Things happen that can damage our relationship or erode trust or just make it go stale. And like anything else in life, anything you want to achieve, anything you want to do, anything you want to succeed at, you've got to put in regular time and effort. A major league ball player doesn't get to be a major league ball player by just kind of hitting the ball occasionally. It takes work and practice and repeat and rinse. And the same is true for marriage. So marriage counseling can definitely help save your relationship. If you're not sure, just go try it and see. I think you'll find you agree with me that marriage counseling can definitely help. Thanks for being here today on this Traffic Thoughts video. These are just unscripted, simple videos I shoot in my car on my daily commute to and from work. And fear not, I'm not actually driving. Thanks for being here.